Hey, hello everyone. It's Gordon Carrell with Contact Victory Gear, and we are so excited. We have our brand new brand ambassador, Mr. Rob Leatham. You may have heard of him before. Some people call him TGO. I don't know. He's supposedly really good, I think, but he's an okay guy. And we're gonna be talking today about holsters. So, Rob, when we first started talking about working together, you said, "Hey, no one's ever interviewed me or talked to me about holsters in my 40 years." So tell us about holsters.
Well, obviously, anybody that does what I've done, and both from the training side and from the carrying of firearms and the competition that I'm probably most well known for, it's an integral part of the whole rig. I mean, it's more, as you well know, Gordon, it's more than just the holster. It's the belt and it's the pouches and having everything be right where it needs to be. Because to shoot at your highest levels, fundamentally, the everything has to be intuitive, has to be memorized. So I don't have to think about it. Like if I have to think about drawing the gun and where the holster's at and the position it's at and the angle I have to put my elbow and the angle I have to put my wrist, that's time. That all costs time. So it needs to be as automatic as walking down the street. So for decades, I've always, and after working with you for this last day or two, working on some products here, you can, and I'm as finicky as you are about such things. And just like you, I'm all about the performance and getting little details right is that last step for your best performance. And in the past, I got to be honest with you, I'm kind of overwhelmed with what your capabilities are here. In the past, everything I needed to do to, is perfect the right word? Is to get it,
Sure.
set it just for me. Required a lot of heat gun, a lot of gluing, lots of screws, and
Was there a Dremel tool involved?
lots of moto tools and belt sanders involved. So a lot of that kind of alteration. And I really didn't understand what, state of the art manufacturing and prototyping was like until I got here yesterday. I really didn't know. I assumed what I was working with before was state of the art, and it's really not. I mean, the fact that I don't know how much we want to tell them about things, but the fact that the the molding technology and the way you do it is so different than what I expected. That products you produce that I assumed, because of the clarity and the definition and the detail in it, I just assumed it was injection molded. I assume it had to be, because the only way I've seen that in the past is injection molded. And then to see the process and how you produce things and still do it out of basically sheets of Kydex, which we all know is the strongest way to do it. It's kind of blown away, kind of overwhelming, and your ability in short order to make alterations, changes, and improvements. I feel like I've been in the caveman days before getting here. So I'm really looking forward to what we can do. I think it's going to be amazing.
Well, we're looking forward to it as well because someone with your experience, as you said, from both the training, the competition side, can keep us not only current but helps us, move forward and ahead and be ahead of the game. What is coming out new? What are the things we should be looking for? So we're very excited about, having you as part of the team. Something that personally, since I've been here for 14 years, yeah, 14 years I've wanted to work with you. So we're excited to have you here. You
But
kind of went through a whole bunch of things there.
that's what my mind works just like you. It kind of just blasts ahead. So let's revisit anything you need in detail, because I'm sure to somebody that's watching this piece, they're going like, "Wait a minute, what did he just say?" That what about? Well, welcome to what it's a scary place in here, Gordon. It's a scary place.
Well, I think what's going to be interesting is for everybody who has to work with you and I together, it's going to get more scary.
I love when you say that. The more the you have to work with this. Yeah, I'm sure Brian and Randy are going to get really tired of me.
Yes. Well, Brian's already tired of me, and now he's got, someone three times as excitable and energetic.
Well,
So
maybe I can take some of the load off you, so he can put that anxiety towards me, and maybe it's easier for you.
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
You talked about things that you've had to do to get a holster, or so what should people look for in their holsters, their mag pouches, their gear? You touched on it briefly as you kind of ran through that.
Well, when you're in the gun shop looking at the product, you're online looking at the product, you can see shapes, you can see if it looks cool or not. And that, I'm not saying that's not an important component involved in the process, because it is. I care about what things look like, but I care less about what they look like than how well they work. So the first thing, it has to appeal to you. I mean, it's like a car. You go look at a car and you don't like it, it's unlikely you're ever going to love that car if you don't like the way it looks. Holsters and any of our equipment to some degree is just like that. Some of the gear just doesn't. There's a lot of gear out there that just when you look at it, you're like, I don't even want that. That might be the best thing ever, but I don't want it. So it's got to appeal to you. When it's in your hands, before you even put it on and get a draw, you can always look at the quality by looking at the detail. You can look at little things before you put a gun in it. You can hold the holster in your hand and you can look at the design and say, okay, that's ingenious how that was done. The shaping, I can see why the shaping of the holster and the opening for the mags or for opening for the gun that go in. You can see all those things. Then when you put the gun in and the gun doesn't have any rock, doesn't have any cant, doesn't have any movement in it. So this is what this is all with the gun in your hand. This is all doing this right here. You can tell at that point. That's the wrong holster. Should I grab the right one? I think Randy's got my holster. So you can tell nothing moves, right? And that's what you're looking for to begin with. So once you're at that point, the next step, obviously, is performance. So it looks good, it fits well. Now you have to draw. So you put it on belt and you mount everything up. And the first thing you look for is, does it go where you want it to be? And when it's in that position, can you get it at the angle? What if we define those X, Y, and Z components as? It has to be in a place that you can effortlessly get a good grip. I mean, I don't know another way of saying it. If you're clearing concealment garment or something, if you're a competition shooter, it has to be easy and quick, clear, fast to get to. Now, finally, we can pull the gun out of the holster. So all those steps occurred before you're likely to like or dislike a product. And then it really comes to how well it releases the gun. We all started with, well, maybe you didn't, I'm all older than you, but we all started with leather holsters. That the first thing we had to do when we get them was loosen them up, because they were always built too tight, because there's 3 live parts of a leather holster's life. Brand new, when it's too tight and the gun won't even come in and out of it easily. The middle of its life, where it fits pretty good, and then the end of its life where it's too loose to do its job anymore. Yep. Which is the weakness of leather. Even though it's beautiful, it smells good, it's soft, there's lots of pros, it's the wrong material to make a holster out of. And you can make leather tires for your car too, but it's probably still not the right material. And at that point, when you draw the gun and it releases from whatever the locking mechanism, whether it's mechanical or whether it's friction, it needs to move a certain distance and then release. This allows you to draw the gun quickly. But on the other end, it needs to have a certain level of retention to keep it from falling out. So if you take it step by step, you start with the way it looks, the fit and finish, the way it mounts, and the way you can get your grip, and then it becomes a position of draw. You start looking at all those details. There's a lot of work to make something as simple and innocuous as a holster. And the average guy just goes and buys whatever's cheapest, or he goes and buys whatever he's seen somebody else use. And quite often, there's no performance to back up. I mean, I don't know a nicer way to say it. And those are the steps basically when you're looking at just a holster. And then you do the same thing for the mag pouches. And then there's different design parameters. If you're looking for a duty rig, it needs to do things different than your competition holster needs to do, and then your concealment pouches need to do. There's a lot of crossover between in a good design. There's a lot of crossover and a lot of usage. A really good concealment holster works really good as a competition holster, but probably can't be a duty holster, right?
Right.
good duty holster can be an okay competition holster, but it's never going to be much of a concealment holster. So it's kind of how that world works. And the broader the reach of the product is based on how well it fits all those other parameters first.
And that kind of brings up an interesting point that I don't know a lot of our listeners know about, but I think our company, Comp-Tac, is one of the few companies that is actually ran by people who compete,
Right.
who use the product every day, not only for concealed carry, but for competition, work with law enforcement for duty, and understand all the points that you're just talking about. Because let's face it, anybody can buy a piece of Kydex, heat it up, and make a holster. But can they get all of those details that you're talking about correct, not only once, but can they do it consistently? So Rob, that kind of brings up a next point about, being, making things consistent. We've been trying to put this thing together for over a year and a half. And you want to kind of talk about a little bit of the process of how you went through that and evaluated things?
Well, yeah. I'm not just looking for, how's a nice way to say this? I'm not just looking for a paycheck and a sponsorship. Gordon, that's not the whole package for me. What I needed was to make sure that if I associated with a product that I believed in it, one. If I wasn't willing to buy your product, I'm not willing to promote your product. That's kind of how I feel about it. So it took some time. I'm sure it was frustrating for everybody on this end because it was you could go look at the shipping dates. When you sent me the first holster that we were testing, that's got to be over a year ago.
Yeah.
Because I call it doing my due diligence, is that I need to go through all those steps that I described before, plus thousands and thousands of repetitions of draws out of the holster, and then use them in competition, because I had to be, I don't know if perfect occurs. It had to be good enough. And good enough for me is probably hard to reach. Let's put it that way. And I needed to put in my time. So after using it for close to a year, the 2 or 3 models, had one for an XDM and one for a 1911, and making all the little subtle changes to it, then your ability to say, well, yeah, we can do that right now. We can change this little thing. I'm a big fat guy. I different in how everything hangs on me, and being able to immediately respond to that. Those were the things. First, it had to be the product, and after that, I had to want to be here. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if you understand how that works to me, but I need a place I'm comfortable to be, and that takes time. And even though I've known you and Randy now for about 100 years, from the competition side of things, the reality is we never worked together because it was never possible previous to this. So it's like getting married again. You're meeting the new family. You got to figure out if the whole thing can gel and everybody gets along. And I had to be comfortable with that, and I am. Matter of fact, after the last 2 days, being here, I'm 10 times more comfortable than I thought it could ever be. Just it's like going home to the home you never had. But
well, that's great. We're certainly glad that you're comfortable here because you are part of the team, and basically our team is family. I think you can feel that, or that's kind of what you're describing. But I guess, can you share what your expectations were coming here as far as a manufacturing facility? And like I said, we've been here a day and a half, and some of the things that you've seen. What is your take on that?
well, I didn't know what to expect, and so I don't go in with any preconceived notions of what you're going to be. But I've been to other places that produce a lot of things. I've been in a lot of factories, some that produce holsters, some that produce guns, some that produce off-road parts and motorcycle things and all sorts of stuff. So I've seen enough manufacturing that manufacturing in itself isn't going to always impress me until you walk into a room that has, $2 billion worth of CNC machines that's making one little tiny part. I'm always impressed that investment's worth it. So I didn't know what to expect when I came in, because I've seen holster shops. It's a dude in the back, with a hammering on an anvil. He's got a clicker there knocking out molds or patterns. And I've been to injection molded places. And I got to be honest with you, the detail in the holsters, I don't know how I overlooked this or didn't know it, because I did my research, but I didn't realize that your products weren't injection molded holster bodies. And the reason I say that is because the detail that's in them, you just don't get informed, in my experience, informed Kydex sheets. And when you showed me the process, I realized why I couldn't have been ready to understand that is because you do it completely different than any place I've ever done it. And your ability to hold dimensions is far beyond anything I've ever seen in the molding process. You know, it's as good as injection molding without the weaknesses of injection molding, which means it takes forever to make a mold. The molds are insanely expensive, and the product that you have to use to injection mold isn't always the right product to make a holster body out of. And so my initial response was like, oh, that's how you do it. And we saw you did some portions of it. Like, I recognize that. But some of the steps and the procedures you've put in place were completely different or opposite of what I've seen in other facilities. And so immediately I realized, holy cow, the capability here to reproduce a precise product is far beyond what I expected. Which was, of course, since I already made the decision, this is where I want to be. It's great to find out that the capabilities are vastly beyond what my expectations were.
And that's great to hear. We take a lot of pride in that, obviously. We have a very well, we're just prideful of our rejection ratio. And I think you and I talked a little bit about that, you know, rejection ratio for us is to send something out and the gun doesn't fit. It doesn't work. And it's our mistake. And I believe you asked me what that was.
But is it ours or is it Randy's?
Whoa.
Rob, you know, I have to go home tonight. And so.
And you're welcome. You know, it's interesting when you talk about that. We talked about the numbers there. It's astounding how little you have. And the vast majority of it is not a. See, generally when manufacturing, the thing we worry about the most is the quality control, and if something goes out and it's not right. I mean, the vast majority of your returns were possibly nothing to do with the product, just maybe mislabeling or something like that. And I get it now, having seen how you make the product. Your success ratio in producing the right product at the right fit levels. Once again, it's just beyond anything I expected with molded Kydex. It's just amazing.
And again, I think part of that process, and I think you touched on it, and I'm just kind of letting our listeners in on it, you know, the fact that we start with the actual fire gun or the firearm. We don't use a blue gun or a SolidWorks 3D print. We CAD off of the actual gun itself, and then we fit check 100%, not a sampling, right, with the actual make and model of the gun before it goes out the door.
Yeah, that's huge, Gordon, that every single holster before it goes over, what do you call that little area where shipping was at, where storage was at? You had a word term for that.
It's QA, and then it goes into main.
Main, yeah. Main. When it goes into main, that every single holster had a gun in it. Mm-hmm. Had the gun supplied by the manufacturer for that model in it. That's just astounding that you bother with that kind of quality control. You know, the reality is you probably don't have to.
We get asked that question a lot by, you know, some of upper management who's come in and looked at our manufacturing process. They're amazed at how we do it, and we've got that question asked. I mean, how many out of 100 is bad? And our philosophy is it only takes one, because our philosophy here is that we don't make holsters, we make life-saving equipment. It's got to work on a person's worst day, and it's got to work perfect. Now, obviously in competition, it's not that important or it's not that serious. But for all the other products and the concealed and the duty holsters that we make, that's our attitude because
Well,
it's got to work.
it has to be because that's like when you look at one of your level 2 or level 3 duty holsters, retention holsters, that there is a life attached to every one of those.
That's right.
It's absolutely true. So I guess that's at a point where a lot of companies, I don't want to say anything negative, but a lot of companies are doing QC control and testing to pull out the bad ones, and you're doing quality control to check how production's running.
We call it QA because it's quality assurance. We're not controlling quality; we're assuring it.
Yeah, at that point, you're not looking. Well, I know how you make the things and the way you're making them. It's very unlikely. Obviously, there's error that can occur, but it's unlikely that anything can get out the door. Very often, it isn't perfect. I mean, perfect, and that's hard to say. That's usually what to say about that.
Hey, Rob, it has been great talking with you about holsters. Before we wrap this deal up, is there anything else that holster wise you want to point out that our listeners should be aware of and be looking for?
Well, first off, we're going to do this every month, I hope. Um, so it's kind of going to be a series of updates. For me, I'm looking forward to a few upcoming matches, some classes I'll be doing where I'll be able to use some of the new products we're working on. And I look forward to that opportunity to tell you how those things worked out. Because just like I do, that it's a never ending R&D process, that we're always testing and improving. And I always leave it this way. It says, I have no idea what I'm going to know next month, but I can't wait to find out.
Exactly. Well, we look forward to it, and next month we'll definitely start touching on magazine pouches for everyone. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Rob, appreciate you being here. Welcome to the team. We're excited to have you, and let's get some stuff done.